this week's edition of Newsmaker Live with me, Kendall Burton. We have two special guests in studio with us this evening. We'll be speaking about road safety as well as education. First of all, we'll be looking at road safety, and to help us do that is Sergeant Leontas Joseph of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force's Traffic Department, with responsibility for the operational aspect of that department. I want to welcome you to Newsmaker Live.
Thank you. Very good evening to you and viewers and listeners as well.
Yeah. Let's jump right in. You've had 19 road fatalities so far this year. Does that represent an increase? Put that in perspective for us.
Well, correction, it's 18.
18.
18. And of course, yes, it has been increased because last year we recorded 15 road fatalities and 15 fatal accidents resulted in 15 deaths. However, November, we have on record 18 fatalities from 14 vehicle accidents. So we have definitely had an increase in the number of fatalities this time around.
Let's break down that figure. What are you finding is the major cause of those accidents?
Of course, not just fatal accidents, but collisions in general. What we've noticed that human error has contributed to most of these accidents. Risky behavior, drivers having a tendency of doing things that a prudent driver should do, and they're not doing it. Speeding is another contributing factor, and of course we have even now the use of cell phones is another disturbing trend. And of course, these are some of reasons why we have
how widespread or serious a problem is this cell phone issue? Because I was remarking to you earlier that I engage in a little exercise on my way to work every morning, and I actually count the number of persons I encounter, other drivers, on the cell phones. Have you contemplated or carried out a similar exercise to determine the extent to which they are used, and how are you cracking down on it?
Well, actually, some time ago, just about 2 or 3 months ago, we conducted our own survey in collaboration with the Ministry of Transportation, and we did the collaboration in trying to figure out the use of cell phones, and the statistics are very alarming. We have quite a few persons using cell phones whilst driving, and of course it is cause for concern to us at the traffic department. And the sad thing is that persons who, and the conversations sometimes are not urgent calls. Most of these calls, I'm sure, are calls that could probably wait for later. Petty conversations, and persons engage the cell phone in talking. Even more alarming is the use of texting, BB, WhatsApp, and of course this is even more dangerous
because you obviously have
to take your eyes off the road, to search for the parts, and so this is a very, very dangerous practice, and one we're really trying to stamp out. And of course it is illegal. It is an offense for persons to use their cell phones while driving. Of course we want to sensitize the public as to how dangerous it is, and so we embarking to sensitize the public, to inform them as to the dangers of using cell phones whilst driving. And of course we are going to be enforcing the laws, because the laws are there. We have our legislation in place, and it is there, and we will be we want to do it education first, and then we will go into enforcement.
A lot of people would have the perception that your role is purely an enforcement role. When you're talking about sensitization, are you doing that solely as a police department or in collaboration with the Ministry of Infrastructure or other agencies?
Of course, we have other agencies on board. And we have been in discussion with a lot of stakeholders. The Department of Transport, like you indicated. We met with the minibus association. You know, we meet with the taxi drivers, and a number of persons, you know, trying to sensitize, and even the car dealers. You know, we have had discussions with them. We go to the schools to...
How do the car dealers fit in?
Well, obviously, the car dealers are the ones importing the vehicles. And what we're trying to, as a matter of fact, the high-end vehicles, you know, the top brand vehicles, these vehicles do come in with devices, that Bluetooth devices that, you know, you could, you know, press a button and you can carry the conversation. But what we've been told by some of these dealers is that even if these features are in the vehicles, but a lot of persons don't feel comfortable, because obviously if you're in discussion and, you know, your conversation is not private. You know, sometimes, you know, someone is driving, you know, your wife is next to you, and a call comes in, you know. So even some of the persons wanting to purchase a vehicle, ask them to remove, deactivate the system. And so we are in dialogue with them. And of course, you know, and that is the way forward. We have to educate and then go into enforcement mode.
Okay. The United Nations has designated the years 2011 to 2020 as a decade for road safety, hoping to do a lot of education in that period to heighten awareness of the dangers of some of those practices you mentioned. We've had statistics suggesting 270,000 people die on the roads every year. I'm accounting for about 22% of the 1.27 million people suffer road fatalities. Are you satisfied that we're taking advantage of those opportunities to create that sort of awareness?
As well as, you see, and this is supposed to be really a joint collaboration. You see, we're not in this alone.
Right.
Road safety is not solely the responsibility of the police. Other stakeholders need to come on board. Okay? And for example, there is a road safety committee in places, for example, like Antigua. You know, and that committee is being headed by the Prime Minister. That is how serious these people take road safety aspects. And so it is not just for the police, but other stakeholders need to come on board with us, and we can push the message forward. It is not just only the police, you know, health agencies, other persons need to come on board, you know, fire department, and so we can move this thing forward as a team. So everybody is on board.
And perhaps part of the reason for that is that some of those very other agencies that you mentioned have not done a very good job of painting an accurate picture of the seriousness of the issue and how it can affect the country as a whole. But you mentioned that you work very closely with the Ministry of Infrastructure, and one of the ways that you've done that is the introduction of an electronic tracking system, if I can call it that. How is that going so far? I know you've been testing it with the expectation or the hope that you will expand the number of devices that your officers have access to.
Yeah, and this is working. This is a new project that just came into fruition just a few weeks ago, and it was launched, and you know, the commissioner was in the media. You know, what happened before? For us to get information, let us say, for example, a particular vehicle, you want to find out information about a particular vehicle, you would have to write to the Ministry of Transport, requesting that information, and that has to be endorsed, and then there's a waiting period, and then you get the information. Or even drivers, sometimes when you have a traffic check, you stop a driver and you ask him to produce his driver's license or insurance certificate. Again, the law still allows a period of time. Driver's license 48 hours and the insurance certificate 5 days, to allow that time for the person to produce. With the new system, however, it allows us to access that information right there and then. Well, we just purchased some some tablets, and of course we have laptops, and we are now connected to the Ministry of Transport system, and now on the road you've now gone virtual. You can, with the click of registration number of vehicle, you can get the history of that vehicle, the name of a driver, and of course you can find out. So now, rather than having to wait for 5 days or an extended period of time, you can now be in a position, and of course that gives us more latitude. You understand? We have now, because time, while you might be waiting for somebody to produce their documents, you know, that person can go and continue an offense. But with that new system now, we are now, and as a matter of fact, we've had so many vehicles impounded. Another thing too, it's alarming the amount of vehicles that are on our roads without, you know, being registered and even insured. And with that new system now, even if the Ministry of Transport, they're now saying that since this new system we implemented, the influx of persons going now to pay there
has gone up
tremendously.
Okay. So give us some figures. You've had the system now for what, a little over a month?
Yes, just about that period of time.
What kind of successes have you enjoyed so far?
A lot of success. Of course, we have more vehicles off the road because we're now in a position to know vehicles that are not insured, vehicles that are not roadworthy. And again, with our traffic checks, it helps tremendously. And so, before, like I indicated, we had to wait. But now we have the new system. We can now literally now take a vehicle right there. You're not insured, you're not registered, your vehicle is not being licensed. You know, we get you off the road.
So how many have you pulled off so far?
I don't have the statistics right now, but we have done a lot. Again, motorcycles as well. You know, the amount of motorcycles that we have had on our roads, it's alarming.
Speaking of motorcycles, we had an incident over the weekend, last weekend, Sunday to be more precise. 2 individuals lost their lives in a collision involving a motorcycle, on which both were rider and passenger. Neither one was wearing helmets. You've come under a little bit of pressure for enforcing the helmet rules or laws. What are some of the challenges that you have in doing that?
Okay, you see, when, for example, and again, you know, when we first started, again, we're talking safety, a few years ago, persons were driving without seat belts. And so we undertook that massive campaign in getting persons to wear their seat belts. And of course, I must admit, more drivers are now using seat belt than about 5 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So we've recorded some success in that area. However, the helmet part, it is proving challenging. You see, because a guy is riding a motorcycle coming down the road. If he stops, he stops. But if he doesn't stop, that is where our challenge lies, because you now have to be chasing that cyclist, and that is not something we really like to do, because you know, in chasing a cyclist, you know, you put that cyclist at risk, yourself at risk, and of course so many things could happen. And so that is one of the biggest challenges for us in trying to stop those motorcycles. But those persons that we stop, of course, we issue them tickets. And the fine for a ticket, a helmet ticket, is $500.
Only?
Well, seatbelt is $250.
Okay.
So look at the so that is how serious we view helmets, and we've reported quite a number of persons for riding, because we realize the importance of wearing your helmet, and we try to preach to persons, you know, you must wear helmets at all times when riding, both the rider and of course the pinion rider.
Do you have any sort of engagement or involvement with the Motocross Association?
Of course, from time to time, they ask us for assistance, whether by means of, you know, we conduct lectures with them. sometimes when they go on their ride, sometimes we accommodate. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest rides we have with the motocross and the other motorcycles is our Independence ride.
Right.
And of course, these rides don't go on without, the police being present. We are always on board with them and assisting them. See that persons adhere to the rules and regulations of the road.
We carried a story this evening, in which we interviewed one of a former member of the association, who had some ideas about how this helmet issue can be resolved. One of them insisting that learners wear full headgear instead of inculcating this bad habit of riding without helmets. Secondly, that perhaps you look at easing, and I know that's a policy issue, not necessarily a law enforcement issue, but easing the duties on helmets to make it more affordable for riders. As well, he had some interesting comments to make about the police helmets, questioning whether they are up to par or up to standard. What can be done to address that issue as far as your own safety?
Of course.
And you can also comment on some of the other suggestions.
Yeah,
as well.
Well, of course, like I've said before, we have encouraged persons, and we are very firm in dealing with helmets. We take a no-nonsense approach when helmets are concerned. As long as you're found riding without helmet, you stop, you are going to be reported and you are ticketed. Well, as far as the helmet for police is concerned, the helmets that we wear are DOT helmets approved by the Department of Transportation. These helmets, in Miami, police use those helmets, and of course, it is also approved by the Bureau of Standards in St. Lucia.
So they are in accordance with some sort of international standards.
Yes, they are in accordance with international standards.
But have you had any fatalities of police officers losing their lives on the road riding motorcycles because of?
Well, of course, we've had fatal accidents. We've had a fellow police officer lost his life about 5 years ago on a motorcycle along the Castries Fort High Road.
It's not a common occurrence.
It's not a common occurrence. We have fatal accidents, but police officers do fall. Of course, anytime you're on a motorcycle, chances of you falling, is always present, and so. But it's not that common that police officers lose their life on a motorcycle.
I want to talk about some of the challenges that you face as a department. I know like I said before, you've been under a lot of pressure for not enforcing, not being present enough, not patrolling enough. You have a police force with a little over 1,000 officers. Of that number, how many are dedicated to traffic enforcement?
As it is right now, our strength is probably like 40, 45 persons.
Yeah.
And that also includes the officer in charge. We have an inspector, we have 2 sergeants, and 3 corporals, and the rank and file members, the constables, form most of the traffic department. And of course, as anything else, you're looking at like probably about 40 persons to deal with the influx of vehicles we have on our roads right now. It is really not an incident. We would have really loved to be almost everywhere, but the harsh reality is we cannot be everywhere all the time at the same time. Our road structure, our road network, when it was constructed, it was not constructed for the amount of vehicles. I mean, we have vehicles literally coming on island almost every week. The roads remain basically almost the same. It does not widen, it doesn't lengthen. And so we now still have to deal with all those vehicles. The very same police officers who are on the road, we have court matters to deal with. We have to attend court. We have to attend to accidents. Persons need a rest day. Persons sometimes fall sick. And we have so many other responsibilities. We have escorts when we have parades, dignitaries, and so the traffic department is really not for the weak and feeble. You must be determined. You must be, because it has its challenges. It's a lot of work. I think it's really the driving force of the organization, I should say. And the records are there to really prove it, because we conduct traffic checks so often. We at the traffic department, we have a what we call a traffic enforcement team within the department. And what these people do really is conduct traffic checks every day. Almost every day, these people are on the road at different times. And we don't stay within a particular, we operate, as a matter of fact, we go island-wide. You know, sometimes we leave Castries and we go down to Viewfort, we lend assistance to another station, and so we are not within just the Castries Basin, but we spread out. So the small percentage, small volume of persons, you know, have so much to do. Okay. And it's of course a challenge for us.
It's time to inform our listeners and our viewers, because of the nature of the program tonight being split between two guests, we'll open the lines to take any calls that you have, any comments that you want to direct at Sergeant Leontis Joseph. You can do so now. You're talking about 40 officers dedicated to traffic duties. How are they distributed across the island?
Well, the figure of 40 is really Castries.
Okay.
Castries Basin. We do have a small contingent. For example, Grosley has a small traffic unit. We have Viewfort. We have the different pockets, the different stations have a smaller unit of traffic.
I imagine, yeah. We have our first call. Good evening, you're on the air. Good evening.
Question, but I'm going to answer. I'm going to listen off my cell phone. My first question would be, do you think the use of a helmet is being fully implemented? Next one, which one is more important, the use of a seatbelt or the use of a helmet? The third question, what is it the traffic department is doing to reduce the number of fatal accidents? Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Of course, both the helmet and the seatbelt is important. I mean, one cannot supersede the other because both of them are, of course, safety equipment. As far as reducing accidents, fatal accidents, we are very proactive. We conduct traffic checks very often, like I indicated. And of course, that is a means of, because the presence of the police on the road, it really creates a dent. Unfortunately, like I indicated, we cannot be everywhere, you know, all the time. And so we have increased our patrols. And like I indicated, we have taken it not just within the Castries Basin, but in the other districts. One of the areas I must say that most fatal accidents are recorded is on our highways. Castries Viewfort Highway or the Castries Grosley Highway. And these are the areas of concern. And of course, you see, when there is congestion, persons are more cautious. But anytime there is a highway, the risk factor becomes more. Persons will probably want to take a chance, you know, to exceed the speed limit because, of course, you know, there is a highway. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we have along the highways.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, good evening. I am not really calling to ask you or the traffic officer any questions. I am just calling to tell St. Lucians that the First Lady of the City of New York, and the 4 boroughs is St. Lucian. Her husband, Bill de Blasio, just won the election. And I'm very happy as a St. Lucian. Thank you and good night.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, you were talking about the number of accidents on the highways, but Bexar has developed a bit of a reputation, hasn't it?
Yes, of course, Bexar. Again, you know, Bexar is in the island network. Bexar has the longest stretch of road with more people living in that area, Bexar. Another deficiency, Bexar, there's very little room insofar as sidewalks are concerned. And so all these are challenges which lends hand to an increase of accidents in that particular area. And you drive the Bexar Highway and you can see sometimes the risky behavior. Persons drive that road, you know, at breakneck speeds. You know, and
because the temptation is just so great.
Temptation is so great, yes. You know.
But I'm sure those concerns or those observations have been passed on to the Ministry of Infrastructure. Hopefully, yeah. We have another call. Let's take that call. Good evening. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Yes. Okay. I just want to say to the officer something that I have said before. Because of all of the reckless driving that takes place on the highway, especially the Groselet Highway and the Viewport Highway, and it happens, it's more prevalent at the weekends. Is it possible at all to have some of your cyclists, traffic officers, but ride across that road back and forth on a weekend night to see the recklessness and to try and stop the recklessness that takes place? Because it doesn't make any sense in a way for the officers to come out when an accident has already happened to measure and to take a report. Wouldn't it be better if they could be there? The fellas would know, well, you know, boy, a traffic cop may be passing up and down. And if they do anything, they break the law, any infractions, they can be stopped on the spot, given a ticket or something. But at least they would know that there is somebody, there are people on the road watching what they're doing. Because, you know, the guys go out, they drink, they smoke, and when they're very high, they get on behind a wheel and they do anything because they know there is nobody that's going to see them, there is no penalty, they just kill somebody and, you know, nothing. So is that a strategy, a small strategy that your department can use, officer?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, your point is taken. And of course, like I indicated, our traffic check, we don't conduct traffic checks just during the day. We do traffic check night times and also even on Sundays. Because see, what we notice that a number of persons, especially when it comes to weekends, you know, Sundays, as if like police supposed to be off. You know, there are no officers.
So that is an accurate assessment that she made. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And I mean, the statistics are there. Most of the fatal accidents we record is really on weekends. And so with that, what we're hoping to do, again, is to increase our weekend patrols. Okay, we have another call.
Good evening. Hi, you're on the air.
Good evening, host. Good evening, presenter. Let me tell you, one thing we all should know in St. Lucia is that we are all grown adults. Everybody who holds a driver's license is above the age of consent. All right. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you the most dangerous parts of the road and when to speed, when not to speed. All these things were taught when you were applying for a driver's license. So it's the onus is on us, typical St. Lucians. You understand me? To be more cautious. All right. Don't be very selfish. And to be able to help each other on the road. And the officer don't have to come on the air and tell you all what to do, tell you all what not to do. All right? And for you all to put pressure on him to put officers here, officers there. I mean, come on, St. Lucia. I mean, you know, we all have to just be more vigilant and all of us have to be more caring for each other. Thank you.
Yeah. At some point, I guess we have to take responsibility for our own actions as well.
Yeah, that's correct. I do appreciate the comment of the caller. And of course, we all have a responsibility to both ourselves, the person on our vehicles, and of course other road users, and that's key. That's a key factor, and you must be cognizant at all times that somebody might be crossing the road. A driver probably might just lose control. I mean, you have to be aware of what surrounds you, and persons again, after not doing that, want to compound that with electronic devices like I indicated earlier on. And of course, we have to be so mindful and so careful because road safety is our thing. It's not just me, but all of us should.
We have another call. Good evening. Good evening. Oh, we seem to have lost that call. Yeah. Hello. Okay, I'm not getting a response. According to statistics, road fatalities are the 10th leading cause of death of young people between 15 and 29 years old. Locally, how does that figure translate? Is that an accurate reflection of what occurs here as well?
Yes, of course. You see, again, the most persons have a tendency, the risky behavior is that age group from 18 to 40, 45, thereabout.
Oh, we have another call. Let's hold that thought.
Hello?
Hi, good evening.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
Yes, I want to know, what is the police doing about, I heard Joseph spoke about road safety. I want to know what is the police doing about the cellular phones and also the loud music, because I think this is a very disastrous element. The cellular phones, every Tom, Dick and Harry has a cellular phone, driving trucks, cars, everything, and this loud music playing on the road. I think the police should target those motorists with heavy hi-fis on the vehicles and do something about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
With the cell phone issue, like I indicated, we are into education mode. And as I speak right now, we are in an advanced stage in trying to make the cellular phone a ticketable offense. And so very soon from now, we will be issuing tickets to persons using cell phones while driving. Of course, the loud music is, of course, of concern, and that too has its challenges, because you need to have proper equipment to test the volume of course. But we, of course, when we find persons playing loud music, normally stop, pull them over, and sometimes have a discussion. And you're really surprised that sometimes I can't speak from personal experience. Pull over a driver with his loud music and try to sensitize him as to, hey, you playing this music. If someone's trying to get your attention, do you feel that you're in a position to hear what the person is saying to you?
An emergency vehicle.
An emergency vehicle is approaching, and person have an appreciation for that. But of course, education, of course, like I said, goes with enforcement as well.
Okay, let's take another call. Good evening. Good evening. You're on the air. Okay, we were talking earlier about the age range of most of the offenders, 15 to 29. You were giving us some local perspective. We have another call? Yeah? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, like I was saying, that that age group is when persons have a tendency of behaving risky behavior, because especially young persons, age brings maturity, and after doing something for a period of time, once you're a certain age, you start to realize, hey, is that really necessary? And then persons have a different mindset. And so the statistics are right in persons within that age group have a tendency of behaving more risky behavior, engage in more risky behavior, insofar as their bad driving habits are concerned.
Okay. You mentioned in responding to the last call the need for more technology, equipment. Let's take another call and we can go to that. Hi, good evening. You're on the air.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let me tell you, I have two questions. One for Mr. Joseph. What I would like to ask him, why does they charge minibuses for without wearing the license? Not the license, or the seat belt. So what about we passengers that are on board? That is the first question. And the next question is for the other gentleman. I don't know his name. I would like you to bring an insurance agent on board, so that people can know when they pay insurance for 15, 20, 25 years without nothing happening. What does happen to their money? I want an insurance agent to come on the line to answer that question for me, please.
All right, thank you very much for your call and your suggestion.
Okay, I must admit that we have been tardy in charging passengers for not wearing the seatbelt, because of course seatbelt is a safety feature in a vehicle, and of course not just the driver but the passengers in that vehicle as well, because you must understand that the person driving that vehicle does not operate the vehicle with remote control. He's also in that vehicle, and of course his life is equal importance as yours, and of course it is incumbent upon it's your responsibility as well to ensure that and all vehicles now come with seatbelts, and we need to educate persons as to the the importance in wearing a seatbelt, because not just the driver alone, but also passengers.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yeah, good night.
Hi.
Good night.
Good night. San Joseph, good job. Okay, let me ask you, I think we should really stress on the point of the motorcyclists not wearing helmets and the difficulty in the police trying to stop them. You know, even if it's for warning. The problem is that they are not easy to be cautioned. And most of the riders of those motorcycles are inexperienced persons who just, like they say, they just get a ride. There is no bike school. You know, if you want to learn to drive a car properly, you go to a driving school. But the problem we are having with the motorcycles are that most of the motorcyclists just get a ride. They just get an illegal bike and they're on the road. So there's an extra pressure problem that they pose for the law enforcement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for calling.
Yeah. Again, you know, he's right in because with you want to learn to drive, I mean, you go to a driving school and you have an instructor, a tutor, and then you go through. But most persons, they just jump on a motorcycle, you know, and they start riding. And these are the persons who, unfortunately, are the ones falling victim to, you know, a number of fatalities and, of course, serious accidents, you know, because they're not taught properly. They're literally self-taught. And, of course, the on a motorcycle, you know, you have that urge, that zeal, that thing that wants to push you. And if you don't, and again, self-discipline really has a lot to do with it. And if you're not self-disciplined, this thing is going to lead you to destruction.
Okay, let's take another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, the previous caller said about guys just jump on bikes, nobody taught them to ride and all that. I mean, I did that about 30 years ago. Nobody taught me to ride, and I just hop on the bike, and I got my motorcycle license.
Right.
But anyway, what I call to talk about is safety. Yeah, a lot of motorcyclists, they ride with helmets. But my point is that the pinion rider never have a helmet on their head.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Right? And the majority of pinion riders are females. So I have been overseas to other countries, neighboring St. Vincent. And from bicycle right up to motorcycle, it's mandatory to wear a helmet. Right? So I want to know why the police not enforce that in St. Lucia. Right? Because most of the accidents and deaths on motorcycles, when you check, none of the riders and pinion riders had helmets on their head. Okay? But they only make issue of it after the fact. I think this thing needs to be enforced. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. But I think you alluded to the difficulty in doing that earlier.
Yes, I spoke of that, how difficult it is stopping those motorcycles. But of course, he's right in really enforcing this point of persons, both rider and pinion rider, wearing a seatbelt. Of course, it is important, and we cannot overemphasize the importance of wearing your helmet. It is, of course, extremely important.
Okay, let's take another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And to your guest. I think you will always get a lot of calls tonight concerning those people who ride motorbikes and the person behind doesn't have a helmet. Now, I want to ask the sergeant, which one you consider more dangerous? The two persons riding the bike, and most times the one behind doesn't have a helmet, or somebody who's riding, for example, a minibus, and the non-driver, not wearing a seatbelt?
Well, both of them are dangerous, you know. Both of them are dangerous, and of course, whether you're the passenger on a car or a van or a truck, or a pillion rider on a motorcycle, it is important that you wear seatbelt and of course you wear helmet. One is not more important than the other. Both of them are safety features.
Okay, great. So lately, a lot of emphasis is being placed on, particularly on the minibus, where they are requesting that in fact they're going to enforce the law that the non-driver wear the seatbelt. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the law is already there, you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So now you're going to enforce it, right? The authorities are going to enforce it.
Uh-huh.
So my question is, how active will you all be in enforcing the pillion rider to wear a helmet? Because you are saying that both of them are dangerous. So are you going to pursue those people as much as you're going to pursue the for example, the minibus drivers?
Mm-hmm. We will call her.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
In your earlier remark about the seat belts, well, I haven't been on a bus in a while, but to my recollection, a lot of those buses have been modified, and most of them, if my memory serves me correct, the seat belts have been removed in the passenger seats.
They're not removed, you know. I think what they do, they kind of push it underneath and try to fit it somewhere underneath. But
so that means actively inspecting all of those vehicles to ensure that they are installed properly and in use?
Well, you see, the Ministry of Transport are the ones dealing with
that responsibility.
Yeah, okay. That is within their purview to carry inspection. And that is done annually when you go into to check, and when you're going to renew your route permit, and of course. But you see, one of the difficulties is that some bus drivers, what they do, for the purpose of inspection, they put the vehicles in order. Even the tires, you find oversized tires. Sometimes these persons, for the purpose of they go into for the inspection, they get the normal tires that the vehicle is supposed to have. They do the inspection, the seat belts and everything, and also they come from doing that inspection, then they just swap and change around and back to.
I imagine that's where you come in.
And that is where we come in as law enforcement officers.
We have another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi.
I don't know if I want to ask questions or to make two observations, but maybe the officer can make a comment on what I have said. The first one is I want to ask him, why does it take so long for a police report to be produced in the case of an accident, especially when people are contemplating civil action? Sometimes the period of time expires within which to bring the action, and the police report, you have difficulty getting the police report. So I want to know, why isn't a police report, if there's an investigating officer who's going to produce a file from which a report can be produced, why does it take so long for a police report to come to the fore? That's my first point. My second observation is I believe there needs to be more training of situational circumstances among the young police officers who are coming into the police force. For example, I park on Bridge Street next to Fix, just before, at the junction before Home Center. Most times I park there when I'm early. There's a line that tells you how far beyond or how close to that junction you can park, because there's no left turn anywhere on Bridge Street. I got a ticket on my windscreen asking me to report to the court for parking less than 20 feet around a corner. Now, had that police officer been properly trained, she would have known that there is no left turn on Bridge Street. There is no corner there. The line indicates how far you can go beyond, the marking tells you how far you can go to park. And at all times, I was beyond the line. I was within the line, sorry. Okay, and there's no corner there. So why am I wasting my time to get a ticket that I have to go and answer in court for, when I could have been doing something else? So I believe these little things ought not to have passed the supervisor of that department. The supervisor should have seen that ticket and discarded it, because there's no left turn, no corner on Bridge Street. Okay, so I'm just making those two observations, because these are hindrances to justice, hindrances to progress, hindrances to wasting of to effective use of people's time and things like that. So maybe the officer can make a comment on what I've just said.
Okay, thank you very much.
although I wanted to engage her a bit because I wanted to find out whether that matter she's talking about, whether that matter has gone to court or whether it's a subject of a court matter.
Because she was saying it should not have been in any case, because once they got to the desk sergeant or whoever is responsible, it should have been discarded.
No. You see, you should not park, and it is law that you cannot park less than 20 feet from a corner. And anytime you park less than 20, whether there's a corner on the left or the right, as long as you park less than 20 feet from a corner, you are committing an offense. Insofar as the line that she's talking about, I really don't know. I was kind of lost as to where she was really talking about. But I know you cannot park less than, and if you park less than 20 feet from a corner.
She referred to Fix in the SNS Fix junction across from MC's Home Depot. You
mean coming down Bridge Street in the northerly direction?
Yeah. We have another call. Let's take that call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah. What am I trying to say?
That'll be our final call, by the way.
Hello? What am I trying to say? Why is that the police are so concerned about all other things? When we minibus drivers have an accident, it takes so long and the insurance don't even acknowledge us. What is the solution for that? What can we do about it? Because at times you have loans and everything, and the insurance takes 7, 8, 9 months. By the time you owe the bank and everything.
Yeah, but that sounds like an insurance issue, not a law enforcement issue.
What?
Yeah, but thank you very much for calling.
Okay.
Yeah, we're due for a break. We'll take that break. I want to thank you very much for being with us, Sergeant Leontes Joseph. Any parting words before you leave us?
Okay, as we into Road Safety Month, we want to, of course, encourage drivers to exercise caution. Be your brother's keeper. Do not exceed speed limits. Sometimes there is really no need to rush because you will eventually get there. I mean, I've seen it going down south. Persons overtake you at breakneck speed. You drive at your same pace, and no sooner you get down to F4, you've seen those persons just parking. And there are always other vehicles on the road. So we need to exercise some caution. We need to be careful. And again, motorcyclists, we want to encourage you to wear your helmet. Of course, not just you, but also the pinion rider. And so let us have a more, we want to reduce on the amount of not just road fatalities, but serious accidents that we get on our roads from time to time.
Okay. Sergeant Leontes Joseph, thank you very much for joining us. You're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS with me, Kendall Burton. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by another guest speaking about education. We'll be right back.